All my life, I've dreamed of seeing the ocean, a real endless one with bright blue water and white sand. My husband Arthur, who has passed away, promised we'd go to one of those beautiful islands in the travel ads. But life went in a different direction. First, I had to raise my son. Then I helped him buy his first house. Then came grandchildren. And then Arthur was gone? Now I'm alone in our house in Arden Town, surrounded by pictures and dreams that seem harder and harder to reach. My name is Esther Norbury. I'm 68 years old and used to teach elementary school. I taught for 39 years and the kids were never the problem. It was always the parents. It's funny how even after all these years, that's still true for me, and my own family. My son, Connor, has always been ambitious. When he was a child, I thought it was wonderful. He wanted to be the best at everything, good grades, winning competitions. I was so proud of him. Arthur and I did everything we could to help him reach his goals. When he had to pick a career, Connor chose accounting. "Money is freedom, Mom," he said. "I want to be free." I didn't realize then that freedom to him meant being free from responsibility, free from feeling thankful, free from us. Prudence, his wife, came into his life when he was 32. She's tall, thin, and always has perfect posture and hair that looks like she just left the salon. The first time I met her, she smiled and called me Mom, but her eyes were cold. I knew it right away, but I didn't say anything to Connor. He was in love and I didn't want to ruin his happiness. After the wedding, they visited less and less. First, once a month, then only for holidays. And after their first child, Gareth, was born, it became just twice a year, Christmas and my birthday. When their second child, Eloise, was born, Prue started using the kids as an excuse. "The kids are too tired to travel," she'd say. "Gareth is allergic to your cat. Eloise needs to get ready for a performance." And I accepted those excuses because what else could I do? Arthur passed away 5 years ago. He had a heart attack in his sleep, peacefully, without suffering, just like he wanted. But for me, his death started a loneliness that gets deeper every day. Connor came to the funeral, of course. He stayed for 2 days and then left, saying he had work emergencies. Prue didn't even try to hide her relief as they got into the car. After that, they called once a week, visited on major holidays, and politely turned down all my offers to visit them. My pension isn't much, but Arthur was always careful. We had insurance, a little savings, and paid off our house completely 15 years ago. I didn't need anything. Connor, on the other hand, always seemed to be struggling financially, even with his job. There was always a new car, house repairs, or an expensive camp for Gareth. I helped out, of course. What mother wouldn't help her child? The idea of traveling came to me on the anniversary of Arthur's death last year. I was sitting on our porch, looking through old scrapbooks, and I found a magazine clipping of Santa Lucia Island with its famous Piton Mountains rising above the bright blue sea. Arthur had saved that picture 20 years ago and said, "Someday we'll stand there together, Essie."
He always called me Essie. That night, I decided.
I had savings, money Arthur and I had saved for a rainy day. I never told Connor about it. Arthur always said, "Keep some money secret, Essie," not because I don't trust Connor, but because every woman should have her own safety net. He was a wise man. He always understood people. For 3 months, I looked up travel deals, compared prices, and read reviews. I wanted this trip to be special, not just for me, but for the whole family. Maybe away from their busy lives, on a beautiful island surrounded by beauty, we could become close again. Maybe Connor would remember how he used to be before money. And status became so important to him. I chose the Pearl of the Caribbean, a private island with a fancy resort with activities for everyone. 2 weeks in a 3-bedroom suite with a view of the ocean. All included trips, spa treatments, scuba diving for Gareth. He always wanted to try it. Local cooking lessons for Prue. She thinks she's a great cook, and even a kids club for Eloise. Even though at 14 she thinks she's an adult. The trip cost a lot, almost all my savings, but I didn't regret it. I imagined eating breakfast on the terrace with a view of the ocean, exploring the island together, sitting on the beach at night, looking at the stars, and Connor being the boy who loved hearing my stories before bed again. I decided to surprise him and announce the trip during our usual Sunday dinner, which happens once a month. Connor always comes reluctantly, but I was sure the news of the trip would change everything. The day came. I made Connor's favorite dish. Roast duck with apples, just like his grandmother used to make. I baked the apple pie he loved as a child. I set the table in the living room with the best tablecloth and used the set Arthur and I got as a wedding gift. They were an hour late. Connor looked annoyed, as if the visit was a burden. Prue immediately started checking her phone. Only Eloise gave me a hug and thanked me for inviting her. Gareth mumbled something that might have been a greeting and went straight to his tablet. "Dinner's ready," I said, trying to sound happy. "I made your favorite duck, Connor." "Mom, you know Prue and I are on a diet," he replied, not even looking at the table I'd worked so hard to set. "We only eat organic meat from trusted farms." "Oh, I didn't know." My joy started to fade, but Prue interrupted, still on her phone. "I'll just have some salad. No dressing, please. And the kids will just have salad. We're watching their diets." "But I want duck, Grandma," Eloise said quietly, looking at her mother nervously. "Eloise," Prue finally got off the phone. "We've already talked about this. No red meat for our family." "Duck isn't red meat," I pointed out. "Mom, please don't tell us how to raise our children." Connor finally looked at me, irritated. "We have specific rules about nutrition." Dinner went by in silence. I tried to make conversation about Eloise's school, Gareth's sports achievements, and Connor's job, but I only got short answers or annoyed sighs. Prue left twice to take important calls. Gareth wouldn't look away from his tablet. Only Eloise tried to keep the conversation going, but after a few sharp comments from her mother, she went quiet too. When the meal was over, no one had tried my duck except Eloise, who had sneaked a piece when Prue left the room. I decided it was time for my surprise. "I have news," I said, pulling an envelope of travel vouchers from the cupboard. "I wanted to give you all a gift." "Mom, if it's some of Arthur's old stuff you want to give us again, we really don't have room for it," Connor started. "No, I interrupted, trying to smile. "It's something special. I bought vouchers for all of us to the Pearl of the Caribbean, a 2-week vacation in a suite with a view of the ocean. It has everything, a spa, diving, trips." There was silence.
Even Gareth looked away from his tablet. "You bought what?"
Connor looked at me like I'd said I sold the house. "Caribbean vacations," I repeated, feeling my confidence fade under his stare. "For all of us. I thought we could all use a vacation together sometime." "Mom," Connor sighed like he was explaining something to a child. "We can't just leave. I have work. The kids have school." "But it's for summer vacation," I said. Quickly, I thought of everything. "You said you were taking a vacation in July, and do you keep track of our schedules?" Prue interrupted, sounding accusing. "That's a little creepy, Esther." "No, it's not." I felt my face turn red. Connor had mentioned it during our last conversation, and I thought, okay, never mind. Connor took the envelope and opened it. "God, Mom, that's a fortune. You spent all your savings on this?" "Not all of it," I lied, not wanting to seem so reckless. "I still have some money left." "Over." "Well, thank you, of course." Connor put the vouchers on the table. "But next time, please ask us before you buy something like this. Maybe we'd rather go to Europe or ... "Oh my goodness, the Pearl of the Caribbean!" Prue suddenly exclaimed, having just realized the resort's name. "It's the fanciest resort in the area. Heidi from my fitness club went there last year and wouldn't stop talking about it." Prue's face changed, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Real interest. "Yes, it's a very famous resort," I said, feeling a glimmer of hope. "It has a spa with local treatments and a diving school for beginners." "Diving?" Gareth perked up, interested for the first time that evening. "Real diving?" "Yes, with an instructor and all the gear." I smiled at him. "I know you've always wanted to try it."
"Cool." Gareth went back to his tablet, but I saw he
was already looking up information about diving. "Is there a kids' club?" Eloise asked. "With workshops or something?" "There is, dear." I reached out and squeezed her hand. There are art classes, local language classes, even cooking classes. That sounds amazing. Eloise smiled at me, and I could see real gratitude in her eyes. Well, Connor coughed. That's a really generous gift, Mom. We really appreciate it, don't we, Prue? Oh, yes. Prue was already looking something up on her phone, probably finding information about the resort. That's just wonderful, Esther. That's so sweet of you. The rest of the evening was completely different. Prue asked me about the details of the trip. Gareth was interested in the scuba diving. Eloise dreamed of art lessons. Even Connor relaxed and started talking about which trips to take first. As they left, Prue even hugged me for the first time in all the years we'd known each other. It was a quick, formal hug, but still. Thank you, Esther, she said. This is going to be an unforgettable vacation. I stood in the doorway waving and felt a warm feeling in my chest. Maybe I was right. Maybe this trip would bring us closer. Together, I was wrong. 3 days after our dinner, I overheard them talking. I didn't mean to listen. I just stopped by Connor's house to drop off cookies for Eloise. She was having a tough time at school, and I wanted to cheer her up. I had a key. Connor had given it to me years ago, just in case.
He said I rarely used it, respecting their privacy.
The front door was unlocked, and I went in quietly, planning to leave the cookies in the kitchen and leave, but I heard voices coming from the living room. Connor and Prue were talking, not knowing I was there. She can't come with us?
That's
out of the question, Prue said, sounding annoyed. I'm not spending 2 weeks taking care of your mother. I know, Connor replied. But she spent a lot of money on those trips. Maybe we could take her with us? Prue laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. Connor, be realistic. She'd be controlling us all the time, telling us what to do, criticizing. And why parenting, it's going to be a nightmare, not a vacation. I'm not saying we should take her with us. I heard something in Connor's voice I'd never heard before, a cold calculation. I'm saying we need to be careful. After all, she's getting older. Who knows how much longer she has? So, what are you suggesting? Prue asked. We take the vouchers, thank her for her generosity, and tell her there's no room for her, Connor replied. Say the room only sleeps 4 or something? Would she believe that? Prue sounded doubtful. Of course she would, Connor said confidently. She always believes everything I say. Besides, what's she going to do? These vouchers are already paid for. They can't be refunded. We'll just use them. What if she checks? Prue asked. Calls the hotel or the travel agent? Why would she do that? Connor sounded smug. She trusts me. Always has. I stood in the hallway holding the box of cookies so tightly the cardboard started to crumble. I was shaking, not with sadness, but with anger. Anger I hadn't let myself feel in years. Anger that had been building up inside me with every hurtful word, every canceled visit, every forgotten birthday. I quietly put the box on the hallway table and walked out of the house as quietly as I'd come in. All the way home, I thought about what I'd heard, how my son, my only child, whom I loved with all my heart, talked about me like I was just a nuisance, a problem to his happiness. At home, I sat down at the kitchen table and, for the first time in a long time, let myself cry. But those weren't tears of pain, they were tears of rage. Anger at myself for letting them treat me like this for so long. For making excuses for their behavior, for looking for explanations. For convincing myself they were just busy, that they had their own lives, for being blind. I don't know how long I sat like that, but when the doorbell rang, it was getting dark outside. I wiped my eyes, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door. Connor and Prue were standing there, both with fake smiles. Mom, Connor started. Walking into the house without being invited, we came to talk about the trip. Yes, I tried to sound normal. Is something wrong? It's nothing. Just a little problem with the reservation. Connor wouldn't look me in the eye. It turns out the suite only sleeps 4, 3 bedrooms, 1 for me and Prue, 1 for Gareth, and 1 for Eloise. But when I booked it, I was told ... Di started to say. There must have been a misunderstanding, Prue interrupted, her smile forced. It happens. especially if you book online. Some of the details might not be clear. I booked through a travel agent, I said, looking directly at Connor. A real person, not online. Well, then that agent was wrong, Connor shrugged. Anyway, we came to tell you we appreciate your gift and are very grateful, but unfortunately there won't be room for you. Maybe next time? Next time? I repeated, feeling something inside me finally break. And when would that next time be, Connor? He waved his hand uncertainly. Someday we can go somewhere more appropriate, maybe a retirement cruise or…
I
Don't need a retirement cruise, I said, and my voice sounded harsher than I expected. I wanted to go with my family on a vacation I paid for, fully paid for, by the way. Mom, don't start, Connor sighed. We appreciate your gift, we really do, but there are real reasons. There's simply no room in the room for a fifth person. I can change the reservation, I said. Get a bigger room or a second room. I'm afraid that's not possible, Prue interrupted. We already checked. The hotel is completely booked for those dates. Not a single room available. They were lying to my face without even blinking, and they expected me, as always, to agree, to give in, to let them do what they wanted. I understand, I said, and suddenly I felt strangely calm. Well, if there's no room for me, there's no room for me. I won't get in your way. Connor looked surprised at my quick agreement. He probably expected tears, arguments, maybe even a scene. Thanks for understanding, Mom, he said, relieved. We'll bring you souvenirs and show you the pictures, of course. Of course, I smiled. When are you leaving? The day after tomorrow, Prue answered. Early in the morning. We need to be at the airport by 7. That's soon. I tried to sound surprised. I thought the trip was planned for next month. We decided to move it up, Connor said quickly. Because of work, there's a lull in the office right now, and my boss let me take my vacation early. Another lie, but I just nodded. I see. Well, I wish you a good time. I hope the weather is nice. I walked to the door, letting them know the conversation was over. They looked a little confused by my reaction, but quickly took the chance to leave. At the door, Connor hugged me awkwardly, a quick, formal hug that meant nothing. Thanks again for the gift, Mom, he said. It's very generous of you. You're welcome, son, I replied, looking him straight in the eye. Family is the most important thing, isn't it? He looked away, mumbled something I couldn't understand, and walked out. Prue didn't even bother to hug me, just nodded and followed. Her husband. I watched them get into their expensive SUV, the car I'd given Connor the money for the down payment on 3 years ago, and drive away without even looking back. And in that moment, I realized it was time to act. The morning they left, I heard a car pull up. I looked out the window and saw a taxi in front of Connor's house. They were carrying suitcases, big, expensive ones, bought just for this trip. Gareth looked sleepy but excited. Eloise was quiet and thoughtful. Prue was bossing the taxi driver around, showing him exactly how to pack the luggage. Connor was checking IDs. I watched them get into the car as the taxi drove them away to the airport, to the island, to the vacation I'd given them, and from which I'd been excluded. As soon as the taxi turned the corner, I went back into the house and headed straight for the phone. No tears, no doubts, just cold anger and a clear plan. I dialed the number of the travel agency, Azure Coast, where I'd bought the trip months ago. Azure Coast Travel Agency. How can I help you? I heard a friendly female voice. Hello, my name is Esther Norbury. I purchased a family trip to the Pearl of the Caribbean from you. My voice sounded calm and confident. One moment, Mrs. Norbury. I'll check the information. There was a short pause. Yes, I see your reservation. A 3-bedroom suite, all included, airport shuttle, check-in today. Is there a problem? Not a problem. I took a deep breath. I'd like to make a change to the reservation. The family has already left for the airport, but I'd like to adjust some of the details of their vacation. What kind of changes would you like to make? The agent sounded careful. First, I'd like to move them from the suite to a standard room. I said firmly, preferably the one farthest from the beach. That's unusual. The agent was clearly surprised. Usually, clients ask for an upgrade, not a downgrade. May I ask why? Personal reasons, I replied. I also want to cancel all the extras I paid for, spa treatments, special trips, diving lessons, all of it. There was a pause. I could almost see the agent frowning, trying to figure out what was going on. Miss Norbury, all of these services have already been paid for. Canceling them now means you lose that money. We can't give it back to you. I understand. My voice stayed steady, but I don't want that money to disappear. I want to use it for another booking. Another reservation? The agent asked. Yes, I want to book a separate trip for myself to the same resort. I straightened up as if the agent could see me through the phone. For the same dates, but not in the main part of the hotel. I want the VIP area, and I want to use all the canceled services for that reservation. Another pause. I could practically hear the agent thinking, trying to understand the situation. Mrs. Norbury, I must warn you that if your family is already flying out, they might be surprised by the changes when they arrive. Oh, I'm sure they will be surprised. I couldn't help but smile, but that shouldn't worry you. I paid for this trip, and I have the right to make changes to the reservation. Technically, yes, the agent said slowly, since the payment was made by you and your name is the main contact, but I need to check with the manager. May I ask why such a big change? I thought for a moment. Should I tell this stranger about my family's betrayal? About how they lied to my face, how they'd taken advantage of my kindness and generosity over the years? Family reasons, I finally answered. Let's just say it's a surprise. I see. I could hear the doubt in her voice. Let me see what we can do. Fortunately, there are villas available in the VIP area, but the cost is much higher than your current reservation. I'm willing to pay the difference, I said confidently. It's not a problem. There were a few more minutes of talking about details, prices, and options. Finally, after checking with the manager, the agent came back to the phone. Okay, Miss Norbury, we can make the changes you requested. Your family will be moved to a standard double room in the main building with an extra bed. The room is in the far wing, facing the parking lot. All extras will be canceled. I felt a little bad for Eloise, the only one who'd been honest with me. But then I remembered how she'd stayed quiet when her parents treated me poorly. She needed to learn a lesson too. Excellent, I said. And my new reservation? We've booked you a private villa in the VIP area with a private pool and direct access to the beach. All spa treatments, trips, and other services that were on the original reservation will be moved to your name. Also, since you're upgrading to the VIP level, you'll have a personal butler for your entire stay. A personal butler? I hadn't expected that. That's interesting. Yes, it's standard for VIP guests. He'll help you with anything you need and organize your stay. Very convenient, especially if you're traveling alone. Great, I nodded, even though the agent couldn't see me. And one more request. I don't want my family to know I'm at the resort, at least not at first. That's unusual, the agent hesitated again, but technically possible. The VIP area is separate from the main part of the resort, and guests from different areas only see each other in the common areas. Perfect. I felt more confident. One last thing. I want to book a special tour for my family on the third day of their stay. A tour of the most beautiful places on the island, but with a specific guide. Which guide? The agent asked. Me, I answered. And, for the first time in many days, I laughed out loud. As I hung up the phone after finishing everything, I felt strangely relieved. For the first time in years, I'd acted without thinking about what other people expected or being afraid of upsetting them. It felt liberating. I walked to the bedroom and pulled an old suitcase out of the closet, the one Arthur and I took on our honeymoon years ago. It was warm but still strong, like our love. I ran my hand over the old leather and felt tears come to my eyes. Oh, Arthur, I whispered, looking at our wedding picture on the bedside table. If only you could see what our son has become, what I've become, letting him treat me like this. I could almost feel my husband's presence beside me. It felt like he put his warm hand on my shoulder, the way he always did when he wanted to support me. Arthur had always seen through Connor. When our son was a teenager, my husband used to say, "Essie, you're too nice to him. Sometimes a child needs to hear no to become a good person." But I didn't listen. I always made excuses for Connor. Always gave in, always forgave, and this is where it got me. "I'll fix it, Arthur," I said firmly. It might be too late to change Connor, but it's not too late to change myself. And I won't be the kind of woman who can be tricked, used, and thrown away when she's no longer needed. I opened my suitcase and started packing. Not much, just the essentials. The island is warm, and I could buy everything else there. I had money, the money I'd been saving for a rainy day, as Arthur had said. As I was finishing packing, my phone rang. Eloise's name showed up on the screen. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Grandma?" Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "Can you talk?" "Yes, dear," I answered, trying to sound normal. "How are you? At the airport?" "Yes, we're checking in," she continued quietly. "I went to the bathroom to call you. Mom and Dad don't know." "Why are you calling secretly?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Because," she hesitated, "because Mom said we shouldn't bother you and remind you that you're not coming with us." I felt the anger rising again, but I held it back, not at Eloise. She was the only one who cared about me. "It was very nice of you to call," I said softly. "Don't worry about me. I'll be fine." "I feel so ashamed, Grandma." I could hear tears in her voice. "The way they did that to you. It's not right." "Eloise, listen to me," I interrupted, not wanting her to get more upset. "It's okay. Sometimes adults do things that aren't right, but it's not your fault. You shouldn't feel guilty." "But I didn't say anything when they told you there was no room for you." Her voice shook. I just sat there and stayed quiet. "I'm a coward." "No, honey, you're not a coward," I said confidently. "You're just a young girl in a difficult situation. And you know what? Sometimes the best way to deal with something unfair is not to fight it directly, but to be smart and strategic." "What do you mean?" I could hear her curiosity through the tears. "Just remember, things aren't always what they seem." I smiled, imagining her surprised face in a few days. "And sometimes the people who seem weak and helpless are actually the strongest. Now, you should get back before your parents start looking for you." "Okay," she sniffled. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, Eloise," I replied sincerely. "More than you can imagine. Have a safe flight." As I hung up the phone, I stood still for a moment, thinking about my granddaughter. Eloise had always been special, sensitive, thoughtful, not like her parents. Maybe it wasn't too late to keep her from becoming a selfish person like them. After the conversation, I needed to act fast. The flight was in a few hours and there were things to do. First on my list was a visit to the bank to take out a lot of cash. You never know what surprises might be waiting on vacation, especially when you're planning something like this. The taxi dropped me off at the Ardent Town Trust Bank branch, the stone building with columns where Arthur and I had kept our accounts for 40 years. I pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into the cool air of the bank lobby. "Good morning, Mrs. Norbury," Doris greeted me, the teller who'd worked there for as long as the bank had existed. It was nice to be recognized, especially after years of feeling invisible in my own family. "What can I do for you today?" "Good morning, Doris. I need to take out some money from my account." I handed her my bank card and ID. "Of course." She took the documents. "How much would you like to withdraw?" I said an amount that made Doris raise her eyebrows slightly. "That's a lot of money, Mrs. Norbury," she said carefully. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," I nodded. "I'm going on vacation and want to have enough." Doris called the manager, who tried to talk me out of taking out so much cash, suggesting safer options, but I was firm. And soon I walked out of the bank with an envelope full of bills safely hidden in my bag. Next on my list was shopping. My closet was mostly practical, comfortable clothes, nothing right for a fancy resort. And I needed something special for my plan, clothes that would make me unrecognizable to my own family. I headed to Hampton Plaza, Ardent Town's fanciest shopping center. I usually avoided the place because of the high prices and snobby service. But today I needed what they had. The first store was Elizabeth Warren, a boutique with clothing for women of a certain age, as they put it delicately. I walked in and immediately felt the saleswoman look me up and down, a young woman with perfect hair and makeup. "What can I do for you?" she asked with a professional smile, but I noticed her quick glance at my simple cotton dress and comfortable shoes. "I need a whole new wardrobe," I said, straightening my shoulders. "I'm going to the Pearl of the Caribbean, and I want to look the part." At the mention of the resort, her attitude changed instantly. Her smile became warmer, and she looked more interested. "The Pearl of the Caribbean! Wonderful!" She came closer. "What kind of style are you looking for? Classic, elegant, or maybe modern and bright?" I thought for a moment. What kind of image did I want? Certainly not the modest, unseen grandmother. "I want to look spectacular," I said, "elegant but with a twist, and not like the average grandmother." The saleswoman, whose name tag read Lavra, looked me over carefully. But now she was looking with a professional eye, not judging. "You have a great figure," she said, "and your posture is wonderful. We can do something amazing." Let me choose. A few things. The next 2 hours were a complete transformation. Lavra was a talented stylist. She brought outfits I would never have picked myself, silk tunics in bright colors, linen pants that fit perfectly, flowing dresses with unusual prints. Everything looked expensive and stylish, but was right for a woman my age, nothing vulgar or trying to look too young. I ended up buying 6 outfits, 3 pairs of shoes, a hat, 2 scarves, and big Jackie Kennedy sunglasses. The amount on the receipt would have shocked me a week ago, but today I didn't even blink as I paid. Leaving the store with several bags, I headed to the beauty salon on the top floor of the mall. My short gray haircut, which I'd worn for the past 10 years, was practical but ordinary. It was time for a change here too. The stylist, a young man named Marcus with bright blue hair, said we should keep the length about the same, but change the shape and add a warm silver color with ashy blonde highlights. It took almost 3 hours, but the result was better than I imagined. In the mirror, I saw an elegant, stylish woman I hardly recognized. "You look amazing." Marcus was clearly happy with his work, at least 15 years younger. "Thank you." I couldn't stop looking at myself. It was exactly what I needed. Walking out of the salon with a new haircut and bags of new clothes, I felt like a different person, stronger, more confident. This new Esther wasn't going to accept being ignored and disrespected. This Esther was going to teach a lesson. Time was running out, and I needed to hurry home to repack my suitcase with my new purchases. But I had one more important thing to do: visit Evelyn. Evelyn Drake had been my best friend since college. We went to teacher training together and started our careers together, but Evelyn was always more ambitious. She became a school principal and retired with honors and a good pension. She was always stronger than me, always knew what she wanted. I called her from the taxi and she immediately invited me over. "Just for 15 minutes, I warned, explaining that I was flying out that day. The taxi stopped in front of her neat house with a well-kept garden, and I hurried to the door, holding the shopping bags tightly. "Good heavens, Esther!" Evelyn exclaimed as she opened the door. "What have you done to yourself? You look amazing." "I decided to change a little," I smiled as I went inside. "I don't have much time, Ev. I have a plane to catch." "Tell me ... She led me into the living room, where the coffee table was already set. "What's going on? You've never been this spontaneous." I told her everything, how I bought the trip, how Connor and Prue had decided to leave me at home, and my plan for revenge. As I talked, Evelyn's face changed from shock to anger, then to enthusiastic approval. "Esther Norbury," she said when I finished. "In all our friendship, I've never seen you act selfishly, not once in 50 years. You've always thought of others, your students, Arthur, Connor, his children. Always putting other people's needs before your own. And look where it's gotten you, your own son treating you like nothing." "I know," I sighed. "I let it happen. I guess I was afraid of losing him. After Arthur died, Connor was all I had left." "Nonsense! Evelyn stepped forward. You have you. Essie, and from what I see today, you finally realized it. Look at you. New hair, new clothes, new confidence. You're finally starting to live for yourself, and that's wonderful. But isn't it a little petty? I asked. Flying to the other side of the world for revenge? It's not revenge, Evelyn shook her head. It's a lesson that should have been taught a long time ago. And if teaching that lesson means flying to a paradise island and living in luxury, I can only see the justice in that. I laughed, feeling the doubt lift from my shoulders. You always know how to cheer me up, Evie. And you've always been too. Hard on yourself, she took my hand. Essie, you deserve this vacation. You deserve respect. And if your family can't give it to you willingly, let them learn a lesson. Go show them that an old teacher can still teach a few things. We hugged, and I felt so grateful for this friendship that had lasted so long, back home. I quickly repacked my suitcase, adding my new clothes and leaving most of my old ones behind. As I put on one of my new outfits, ivory linen pants and a tunic with an abstract print, I felt like a different person, a woman who knew her worth and wouldn't let anyone treat her badly. The flight lasted about 6 hours. As we started to land, I saw an island from the window, green and surrounded by blue water. It was exactly how the Pearl of the Caribbean looked in the pictures, but even better in person. At the airport, I was met by a hotel employee, a young man named Raymond, who took me to a fancy car with the hotel logo on the door. Is this your first time with us? Raymond asked as we drove off. Yes, it is, I replied, looking out the window. Oh, then you're in for a treat, he smiled. The Pearl of the Caribbean is a very special place. Many of our guests come back again and again. The drive from the airport to the hotel took us through beautiful scenery, small towns with colorful houses, stunning ocean views, and rainforests where the sunlight shone through the leaves. Finally, we drove through a gate and onto the resort grounds. The main hotel was a big building made of white stone and glass that fit perfectly into the scenery, but we drove past it to the private villas hidden among the plants. The VIP area is in the most private part of the island, Raymond explained. There are only 12 villas, and each one is completely private. The car stopped in front of an elegant villa with a wide porch. When I stepped into that villa, the air felt different, lighter, freer. The ocean sparkled just beyond the glass doors, and for a moment I just stood there, letting it all sink in. The place was quiet, but not the kind of quiet that comes from being alone. It was peaceful, like I was finally standing inside one of my own dreams. The butler, Damien, showed me around like I was royalty, and for once, I didn't feel the need to apologize for being treated well. I belonged there. That morning, I sat by the pool with a drink in my hand and felt the sun warm my face. It had taken me 68 years and 1,000 sacrifices to get to that moment, and I savored every second. Meanwhile, somewhere else on the island, my son and his perfect little family were checking into a very different experience than they expected. No suite, no view, no perks, just a standard room with an extra bed and a view of the parking lot. I almost wished I could have seen their faces, almost. 3 days into the trip, I arranged a surprise. The hotel staff thought it was odd that I wanted to host the island tour myself, but they didn't ask questions. When I arrived at the dock, they were already there. Connor, Prue, Gareth, Eloise. They looked like they'd just been served sour lemons on silver platters. Prue's face turned stiff. Connor looked stunned. Gareth looked up from his phone, and Eloise. That sweet girl, she smiled like she'd just seen the sun come out after a storm. Surprise, I said as casually as I could. Room got a bit tight, so I moved. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Later that night, I hosted a beach dinner. Bonfire, stars, soft music, the works. I sat at the head of the table, the woman who had paid for everything, who had been lied to, dismissed, discarded. But who now held all the cards? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I told them the truth that they would never control my money, my choices, or my home again. That the woman they thought they could manipulate was gone. And the one sitting before them had woken up. Eloise reached across the table and held my hand. Her eyes were soft and sorry, and I knew then that not everything was lost. She still saw me. On the last morning, as the sun rose, I sat on the terrace with my coffee, watching the waves roll in. Damien brought me a note. It was from Eloise. Just a few lines, written in a child's careful hand, but it cracked something. Open in me, she said I was the strongest person she knew. That she loved me. That one day she wanted to live near me. I held that note to my chest and looked out at the endless blue. The same blue Arthur and I had once dreamed about. And I whispered, "Arthur, I made it. I didn't come here for revenge, I came here to remember who I was, and I found her again. The woman who once stood in a classroom full of noisy children and held their attention with just her voice. The woman who loved deeply, gave endlessly, and stayed quiet too long. Not anymore. I'm Esther Norbury. I'm 68 years old, and I'm just getting started.